Welcome back, guys, to the Jake Ellenbogen channel. I'm Jake Ellenbogen, and once again, we have another MCU video. This time, I'm going to be ranking all 23 MCU movies. We're going to go from 23 to 1, and let's have some fun doing this. You guys could subscribe if you like the show. Hit the like button, the thumbs up as well. And before we get into it, just letting you guys know that you can head on over to manscaped.com and you can use promo code DTR or JKB and get 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. Manscaped is our proud sponsor, and we're happy to be with them. Now, moving on to this episode here, I just figured I'd do a video. I recently rewatched all of the Marvel movies. For those of you that know me, you know that I've done this. You might even already know, spoiler alert, who is in my top 23, how that's ordered and everything. So, we'll get into it. We're going to start off here. Number 23 is what many would expect, unless you're not counting it in your list, and that is The Incredible Hulk from 2008. Edward Norton did a great job, I thought. He's a great actor. But this movie is the least MCU movie that you could watch. And to be honest with you, I don't know if Incredible Hulk would work as a true-on movie, a full-on solo film, even if it was Mark Ruffalo. Maybe I'm wrong in thinking that, but I don't feel like Hulk is a go-to character. I feel like Hulk is a supplemental character. And this might piss people off, but the way I see it with Incredible Hulk is that he was great in the MCU as an Avenger, but what would Incredible Hulk add as a main character if he had to carry a solo film? You'd mainly want him to stay in his human form. That way you could kind of develop relationships and, character development and, just kind of get an idea of who the person was. And that is what they did with The Incredible Hulk. That is what Edward Norton portrayed. I thought he did a really good job of it. But this movie just isn't very good. It's not horrible, but it's easily the worst MCU movie. Many don't even count this in the MCU, but I'm going to count it. I'm going to count it because the end credits show, first off, they show Tony Stark, but second, they show Thunderbolt Ross, who is still relevant as we move forward in the franchise. So, coming in at 23, Incredible Hulk. All right, 2019. We got to see an older Avenger, maybe even you could say the origin story of the Avengers, how they got their name anyway, in Captain Marvel in 2019. We saw DH Nick Fury, and we saw Brie Larson get her opportunity in the primary role. Now, this was an interesting movie because it comes out after the events, and not like in the timeline, but we got it after the events of Infinity War. So we know the after credits kind of showed Captain Marvel was coming. Nick Fury takes out the pager, hits the button, and boom, we expect Captain Marvel to come. But this is a prequel to all of that. This is the story of Captain Marvel. Now, this movie is pretty good. It comes in at 22nd. So obviously I have it as the second worst MCU movie, but I actually love it. I think it's just a testament to how good this series is and how they really haven't skipped a beat. I've been really impressed just with who they've been able to add as actors and actresses to their, wide roster. And furthermore, I'll say that I think, the Captain Marvel story is very interesting with Marvel and, the Kree, versus the Skrulls. I always found that really cool. So I thought they did a nice job. There were some cool throwbacks, seeing, Blockbuster and, her 9 Inch Nails, t-shirt, little references there I thought was cool. All in all, it kind of set up a potential, I mean, albeit it's way back in the timeline, it's before Captain America, or after Captain America, sorry. But I thought it did a good job of setting up eventually, what we will get is the secret invasion. And I think that story is going to be very interesting moving forward. But yeah, I thought, the introduction to Skrulls was really cool. And I liked, this movie all in all. And I thought it was really cool looking back that Monica Rambeau's in it, who's going to be in the second movie. Moving on, 21st place, we have Iron Man 2. Look, Iron Man 2 is not my favorite. I think there's some great acting. This is obviously the debut of Don Cheadle playing Rhodes. And then, of course, you have, Tony Stark, who's played by Robert Downey Jr. You have Pepper Potts, who's played by Gwyneth Paltrow. And you even get Natasha Romanoff, played by Scarlett Johansson. But I thought Mickey Rourke did a good job as Whiplash. The problem I had is that Whiplash didn't really have enough of a feature in this movie. I don't feel like he was featured enough, and I felt like the ending was very lackluster. So, all in all, this movie had its moments. It was cool seeing the Tesla, because they filmed it, of course, at the Tesla headquarters. It was cool seeing, that taking place in the Tesla headquarters. It was cool seeing the cameo of Elon Musk. There's some cool moments in this film, but I think the ending really ruins this film to me. And the protagonist, I just kind of feel like, is all over the place, where you don't really get to see him a whole lot. And then at the end, he comes back and has this master plan, and it gets, thwarted pretty quickly. So I didn't really love the ending. Felt like it was very anticlimactic, but that's just me. Moving on to 20th, Ant-Man from 2015. Look, I really like this movie, and I know it falls at 20th, but I just thought they did an incredible job of making these Ant-Man movies. Straight up, I don't think it could have been easy. You're taking everything at normal size, you're shrinking it down, so you have to make that Lego. That Lego now has to turn into a building and all that. So they did a really nice job with these movies, slimming down the size or growing true to size. Hank Pym, love his character. Love the Wasp's character, but of course she wasn't the Wasp in this one. And I mean, Paul Rudd is just $1 million. Paul Rudd is such a great actor. He's hilarious. He has his own spin on it. So I really, I do really like this. I do really like this movie because it has action. And I understand it's Ant-Man, so it's like, some people really just don't take it as seriously as the others. And I mean, I get it, but Ant-Man's important, and it kind of goes to show you, Paul Rudd can really do a nice job by adding, his comedic flair to an action movie. So moving on, we have at 19, Thor the Dark World. Now look, there's a lot of hate on Thor the Dark World, and I get it. I do. I understand, maybe you didn't like the Dark Elves, all that, fine. But I thought this was a really good film. I really enjoy it, and, this is really the first time we are introduced to the Infinity Stones. So it's a very important film in that series because of that, with the Ether. Maybe the Ether wasn't everyone's favorite. I thought the movie, in a sense, was just really cool. The way, the teleport or whatever it was, the hole in reality, that wormhole that was created. I thought it was really cool. And I mean, hey, it gets a lot of hate, but they go back to that time period in Avengers Endgame. So, it was definitely important. But moving on, we have Iron Man 3 here. And Iron Man 3 at 18, I know might shock some people. I thought it was really cool because it was one of those movies where everything goes to hell in a handbasket, and Tony Stark is forced to really change everything he's doing. He can't live that lavish lifestyle. He gets really cocky and kind of he gives away his location, which I don't. Still to this day, I was really I was confused by that. But he gives away his home, his home address to a reporter. It gets blown up, and then after that, you really kind of see this guy dealing with all sorts of anxiety and having to really, make it on his own. He has help from a kid. The kid ends up showing up at his funeral later on in the story after Endgame when he passes away. So I thought that was a really nice touch, but it was definitely a weirder movie because you had the fire people. I don't know the actual term for them, but you had the people that would blow up into flames, and you had all the different Iron Man suits and everything. I don't know. It was a weird movie. The Iron Patriot was weird. It's just not my favorite. It's not bad. I think the ending is way better than 2. But I definitely found that this was a bump, a bumpy ride. It was up and down, up and down, up and down with Iron Man 3. And I just don't know if Tony Stark would have been that dumb, based on how they've made his character to give away his home address. I understand he was cocky and everything, but to give away his home address like that, I don't know how realistic that was. But I like the way it all kind of tied in and everything. I just, I thought that was a little kind of ridiculous, but that's just me. Moving on to number 17 here, we have Captain America, the First Avenger. Look, I know people are going to say, why is this not higher on your list? So what I'll say is this, 17 is pretty high when you have 23 movies and 22 of them are really, really, really good. Captain America is awesome, okay? I didn't like it at first, like back when I was little, but rewatching it and just, the connection to our history in, the United States, or I shouldn't say our because I probably have other people from other countries watching this, but I live in the United States, so I get carried away and say our. But yeah, American history. Just has that tie. And I really like that, it incorporates that. Captain America also incorporates, Bucky Barnes, who, as you know, is becoming a bigger character in Phase 4 to Phase 5 of the MCU. But yeah, I just thought it was a really nice origin story of Captain America. It was told the right way. And this movie, in 2011 when it came out, it was awesome. I think it kind of falls down the list because it was higher up initially when I first watched it. But all these movies, it just it's not dated, but there are times where it doesn't hold up to the other movies in terms of the way it was filmed. So the first Avengers really good, obviously, but it's 17th for me. 16th, I have Thor. Thor's awesome. Thor has a really awesome origin story. The hammer's really cool because it comes right after, I believe it was Iron Man. So right after Iron Man, I want to say 2, you're looking at Thor. It goes right into that. And you see S.H.I.E.L.D. is gathering around the hammer. And then you find out how Thor gets sent to Earth and how the hammer gets sent to Earth. The whole frost giant debacle. And, we see some pretty awesome characters introduced. First off, Heimdall, I don't think gets enough credit. Played by Idris Elba. I think he's just great. Of course, Odin is great. Thor's great. Natalie Portman's character, Jane Foster's great. We'll see more of her in Thor 4, Thor Love and Thunder. And then, of course, Tom Hiddleston's Loki is great as well. So, we get an opportunity. We actually see our first, we see our first movie debut of Clint Barton, Hawkeye. So that's pretty cool. This movie is really cool. Adds a little bit of humor to it. Obviously with Thor coming to Earth, he has no idea how things are run there. It's way different. For instance, he'll slam a glass after drinking it. which of course, they do in Asgard, but on Earth they don't do that. So there are just some of those cool connections that you can make and what have you. But all in all, I do really like this film. I like just I love Loki's character, to be honest with you. I think Loki is just a phenomenal character, and obviously, Chris Hemsworth is just incredible Thor. But this came in at 16th for me. Maybe a little low for some people. I still really, really like it. Can't stress it enough. I still think 16th is not bad for, considering all these great movies. Now moving on to 15, I have Doctor Strange from 2016. I mean, Benedict Cumberbatch was awesome in this. And I love Doctor Strange because the way it was filmed, the effects they used, it was truly one of a kind. It was one of its own thing. I mean, like, I hadn't seen anything that mind-bending since Inception. There are a lot of those scenes where you're watching and you're seeing, cities folding and things along that nature. The introduction of Dormammu, it was all really cool. So I really enjoyed Doctor Strange, the origin story of Doctor Strange. He was introduced a little bit late, but they had to, 2 years before Infinity War. And, I'm glad they did because I thought this movie hit home. Now, Doctor Strange is going to be huge in the next phase. Obviously, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness is going to be monstrous, but also the emergence of the villain Mordo. Mordo was actually in this movie, and you could see him slowly, turning bad, and then at the end, eventually, he caved in the after credits. So that's 15. Moving on, we have 14. It is Avengers 2012. Look, Avengers is really fun, a lot of action. The reason I think it falls so low, despite having the all-star cast, is because at the end of the day, the Chitauri invasion's really cool, but it almost seems like that's rushed into it. Like, there's this whole portion of this movie dedicated to Loki, and then Loki doesn't really even matter after that. He matters. I'm not going to say he doesn't, but it feels as though this isn't the best movie. Like, it was awesome when it came out, but I feel like it doesn't, like, when you go back and rewatch it, I don't feel like this is a better movie than any of the, Infinity War, Endgame, Civil War, Winter Soldier. Like, I don't feel like it's better than any of those movies. Still fun movie, very fun, good movie. But it comes in at 14, which again is really high. But for some people, they might think it's a little low. Moving on, we have Captain America Civil War at 13. Look, this movie, I have mixed feelings about. I think it's a good movie. There's a lot of shaky cam, which is something to keep in mind. It's just filmed a little bit differently than, Winter Soldier. And it's really noticeable after watching Winter Soldier. But this movie, introduced the Black Panther, which is cool. Introduces the Black Panther and Spider-Man as well. This is Spider-Man's MCU debut. I like this movie, but there are times where this movie seems to drag a little bit as far as, all right, we get it. You guys disagree, but this is kind of ridiculous. And basically what I mean is that, when you look at what the Avengers are, and you look at the fact they fought the Chitauri and they have all sorts of stuff, waiting in the wings, and then they're going to go out of their way to fight each other. I know this is based on the comics, but I couldn't really ever take this Civil War as seriously as some other fans. Especially the way Bucky, who is somewhat remorseful with the whole, killing Tony Stark's parents, at the end, he kind of isn't remorseful. And he's like, when you watch him and he fights Tony Stark, he's like mad. It's like, at the same time, it's like, you killed Tony Stark's parents. I think he has a reason to be mad at you, even if you were under control. The dynamic of Vision and Wanda kind of grows in the background of this. I wish they kind of they could have put those two on a pedestal in a sense, or more of a pedestal during the show, during the movies They did that obviously in WandaVision to make up for it. Another thing I want to point out, and I mentioned this in the Falcon Winter Soldier video, Falcon is kind of a weakling, and he's kind of like a tag team partner type of guy, but the weaker link. And I felt like in this one, it just kind of just showcased that. We also see James Rhodes get hurt by Vision, by accident, hurts his back pretty bad. I thought he was going to be paralyzed, but he ended up not being. And then we actually see of course, the obvious turn, Natasha Romanoff helping out Cap. Pretty much everyone saw that coming. So it's just one of those movies where, you see Baron Zemo, who is, orchestrating this whole thing to break up the Avengers, and they fall for it. And the Sokovia Accords are kind of silly because of, how many lives that they truly save versus how many that they lose in battle. If you were to make it, like today's standards, I don't think that they would do anything like that, but who knows? I think really it's just kind of a shot at the government and how they wanted to take control of the Avengers and all of that. But nonetheless, it's a good movie, and I like the introduction of Spider-Man and the introduction of Black Panther. I think they both work pretty well. Moving on, we have number 12, and that is Ant-Man and the Wasp. Love this movie. Highly underrated movie. Ant-Man the Wasp kicks ass. It is a fun movie to watch. I think they definitely took the visual effects to another level. With the antagonist Ghost, it was really cool, having another one of those, to be able to have a suit like that and be able to go invisible, cloaking and all of that. I thought this was just a really good movie. And it kind of, there was a guy who, he was looking to buy this or steal this Pym-Tech. And he said he was after it for some very important people. And we never got anything more on that. We know there's going to be a Quantumania Ant-Man and the Wasp. So that's going to be the third installment of the Ant-Man series. And we don't know if that will necessarily tie into it, but that's definitely something to keep in mind in a universe where everything seems to tie into everything. Like this dynamic, I like, the fact that they carry on the Sokovia Accords. They carry on the fact that, Paul Rudd's character, Scott Lang, is in trouble because of the previous events of Civil War. I like that they tied that in. Now moving on to number 11, before we get into the top 10, it goes to Spider-Man Homecoming. For those of you who know, I'm the biggest Spider-Man fan out there, or one of them. So to get to see another Spider-Man installment, played by a younger actor, it's just a different development. I was really excited. And Tom Holland has absolutely killed the role. He has been unbelievable at Marvel and, Sony could have asked for. This movie is no different. Michael Keaton plays Vulture. Thought he did a great job being an antagonist. You see all sorts of, mentions. They might, miss around with some of these characters. Shocker, for instance. Mac Gargan. And of course the Tinkerer as well. But I really enjoyed this. I really like the Aaron Davis part, who's the Prowler in the comics. I like that, and basically showcasing that Miles Morales lives in this universe, which is also great. I like this dynamic between School and Spider-Man. And I really like the appearances that Tony Stark makes, being kind of that leader, and that, he doesn't just leave Spider-Man after, Civil War. He knows that they can work with him and he'll be important. The events of Homecoming happen not long before Infinity War. So, this is a good movie. It's a fun movie, but it doesn't feel as though it's more happy-go-lucky. There isn't kind of like a dark to it. I don't feel like it's a mature movie in a sense. I feel like this is the introduction to a kid Spider-Man, and that's how I felt. So that's why it didn't make the top 10, but it was definitely high up there. We didn't get a true origin story of Spider-Man either, with this one. Thank God they didn't show us Uncle Ben dying again, because I didn't really need to see that again. But we never really saw how Peter, with Tom Holland, how he became Spider-Man. We never really saw that. So that's something interesting there. Moving on, number 10, we have Black Panther, came out in 2018. Look, it introduced us to vibranium, the idea of vibranium, and Wakanda. Now, vibranium was already in the MCU, but it really drove it home that vibranium comes from Wakanda, and this is a big deal, and how amazing Wakanda is. It's my favorite setting in the entire MCU. I think it's just absolutely gorgeous. You had Michael B. Jordan playing Killmonger, who was just a fantastic antagonist. And then, of course, you have the late, great Chadwick Boseman playing King T'Challa. T'Challa was such a great character. Shuri is such a great character as well. Letitia Wright does a great job. This has a great cast, and I love this story. How he takes over for his father, of course, who is murdered during the Sokovia Accord signing in Civil War. And I like how, again, it goes into that. But I also like, you get to learn their culture, because Wakandans have different culture. And you also find out that just because they are isolated away from everyone else doesn't mean that they haven't been, advancing technology past everyone else either. And they really have. And you find that out when you see Shuri and what she's able to do with technology-wise. You see, Black Panther allowing her to drive a car from her location as a virtual car. So there's all sorts of crazy stuff that Black Panther introduced, and I love it. I think it's a great movie, very rewatchable, and I just love that dynamic of, Killmonger, played by Michael B. Jordan. I just think there's not a villain like that. He's got like this confidence to him, and he talks like you and I, but like he's the main villain. I don't know. It's pretty cool. So definitely, if you haven't seen any of these movies so far, go ahead and watch them. But Black Panther comes in at number 10. Moving on, we have the late, great, and classic Iron Man 2008 at number 9. The origin story of Iron Man is so cool. Being taken and, everything, you pretty much know without knowing that something is wrong. And Obadiah Stane, who is Tony's right-hand man, in a sense, or he's rather Obadiah Stane, right-hand man, you can tell something's going on. So I love this twist where Obadiah Stane is the one that ends up being the one that turns on Tony. He planned all of this, the 10 rings and the kidnapping and all to try to take Tony out of the game. I find it very interesting, especially this is the start of Tony Stark's character. And Tony Stark's character goes from being, billionaire playboy, selfish, douchebag to he ends up at the end of the day saving the entire universe. And very unselfish, ends up being a family man. And I think it just kind of goes to show you this is just a great landing. This is a great starting point, because it's such a great, story of how Iron Man becomes a thing and how Tony Stark, kind of rises from the ashes as far as a human, because we already know he was made of money, but always found that really interesting. There's some funny references made to MySpace. It feels like a dated movie, but it's still great. It's just a classic, really. If you're looking at an MCU classic, Iron Man in 2008, the year it was, the year the MCU was first, put together with Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk. I just think this is on another level of the other movies. Now, the other movies are better in terms of, using special effects and things along that nature. But Iron Man, I feel like, has a better pace and a better story. And I just think it's way more entertaining. So Iron Man comes in at 9. And now we have at 8, we're going to start off with Guardians of the Galaxy here. You guys know it was coming because we haven't said anything yet. And it's not like I was going to, forget it on my list. Guardians of the Galaxy is freaking awesome. From 2014, Peter Quill, Gamora, Drax, Rocket, and of course Groot. They make up a team of Guardians after they're all put in prison. They all break out and they create the Guardians of the Galaxy. Really love the dynamic of all them. I also love this comedy sense. It's like it's action, yes. It's space action, but there's a lot of comedy put into this. And Chris Pratt, who's at this point he was coming from being in Parks and Rec to going into Guardians of the Galaxy and eventually Jurassic World. He has had a fair share of comedic performances because of course he was Andy Dwyer in Parks and Recreation. Now this is a great movie. It's a fun ride throughout the whole thing. Going up against Ronan, we see another Infinity Stone. This is the one that really starts to drill home the Infinity Stones. It's mentioned the ether. And then, of course, shown the Infinity Stone, at the end of the Dark World. But this is when it really starts to pick up. Plus, we get a introduction a little bit to Thanos. Now, Thanos isn't in this movie, technically. But Thanos is talked about. And we find out that Gamora is Thanos' daughter. Of course, he took her. So it's not actually blood daughter. But you get my point. I just think this did a great job of setting the tone early on for Guardians of the Galaxy. James Gunn is a phenomenal director, and if people didn't cancel him, well, Guardians of the Galaxy 3 would have already been out by now. So that's Guardians of the Galaxy at 8, and then at 7, we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Absolutely love this. I love the character development of Yondu in this. I love just basically the trials that Peter Quill has to go through, wanting a father, not having that father in his life because his father was Ego, the living planet, who is a celestial. And he lost his mother, of course. So Yondu basically raised him. And you find throughout this movie that he really starts to appreciate what Yondu did for him as his adopted father. Obviously you have that dynamic with Gamora and Nebula teaming up, eventually making up, and it's all really cool movie. Being on Ego's planet, I think that setting was really cool, and the twist as well. You knew everything was too good to be true, but then when you see that scene where Gamora and Nebula are fighting. Under the soil, of course, there's all the dead bodies, the bones and everything, because Ego is, sacrificing everybody. I just thought it was really cool, that dark turn. It's a very dark movie, kind of hidden behind the humor and everything. At the end credits, we also get a tease of Adam Warlock, who is initially bad but becomes good in the comics. So that's a cool thing that was added. The first one was Howard the Duck, so that wasn't really that wasn't a huge big deal, but I liked this. So, I thought this movie was really fun, and unfortunately Yondu died a heroic death, but he died nonetheless. And it's a sad movie, obviously, finding out that Peter's father was a celestial and planted cancer in his mom. That's obviously not the greatest thing, but it introduces character like Mantis, who ends up being in the Guardians of the Galaxy moving forward. So that's always that's cool. When you add a character like that, it's a really good movie, and I like it more than Guardians of the Galaxy 1. I felt like it really expanded on everything that Guardians of the Galaxy 1 hit on. Now we lose the older Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy. He goes from baby Groot to teen Groot. I'm all for it. So, I really like this movie. moving on to 6th. I'm going to get some hate on this, but I have Captain America the Winter Soldier. Why am I going to get hate? Because it's not in the top 3. And I've been seeing a lot of people are all over this being a top 3 MCU film. I get it. It's a great film. But when you have it at 6 out of 23, you have to know that I'm very high on this. And I love the dynamic of S.H.I.E.L.D. And really, this is the end of S.H.I.E.L.D. This is the end of S.H.I.E.L.D. as we know it. This is the end of Hydra as we know it. Obviously, these will, there'll be lurkers and everything. But Captain America starts to realize that he doesn't really see the point of S.H.I.E.L.D. He doesn't see the point. Obviously, he's not a fan of Hydra. And this movie, you start to see some crazy developments, including the fact that Nick Fury fakes his death. And this is a big opportunity. When you look at what Natasha Romanoff means to this film, she releases all of the S.H.I.E.L.D. data and Hydra data on the web. So there's a lot going on here. Eventually, at one point or another, Hydra has a planned attack to take out every single Avenger, or with this algorithm. They use this algorithm. It's actually really cool and transcendent in a sense. Hydra has this algorithm where they were going to shoot down anybody essentially that would stand in their way. In that algorithm, it's been confirmed that Doctor Strange was a part of that. Now, Stephen Strange being on that algorithm is really interesting because in 2014, he is still just a surgeon. He is not Doctor Strange as we know it. So this algorithm actually predicted Stephen Strange to end up as Doctor Strange, which I always found really cool. But yeah, this is an all-timer movie. Don't get me wrong. It only finished as 6th because the top 5 I just think are phenomenal, and they're just a little bit better in my mind. But this is just a great movie all in all, and it's just filmed so well. And the introduction of Bucky as the Winter Soldier, Sebastian Stan really pulls off, very well. Now moving on, we have number 5. We get in the top 5 here, and it's an Avengers movie, Age of Ultron. I know this is going to be a little surprising to some. I like Age of Ultron a lot. I understand not everyone likes Joss Whedon's work, and I understand why they don't like Joss Whedon's work. But I do like that Age of Ultron, first off, took risks. This was not, a happy-go-lucky movie. Anytime you have a movie where, pretty much everything goes to hell in a handbasket, you're taking a huge risk. Now, in this movie, we see the creation of Vision, and we see the introduction of Wanda Maximoff and Pietro Maximoff. And now, we won't get into the fact that they literally couldn't call these mutants, which they were, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. They couldn't call them mutants because, Fox had the mutants, and they had the rights to them. So, part of Fox's agreement, or rather deal with Marvel, is that Quicksilver had to die in this movie. He couldn't remain with the MCU moving forward. So they had to kill him off. And you could see it's kind of abruptly. I mean, it makes sense. Obviously it's war. There's going to be loss and war, but you can definitely tell they threw that in there at the end for that reason, or at least after that it makes a little bit of sense. You see the end of Sokovia, and that's definitely something. Ultron is a phenomenal character, voiced over by James Spader. I thought he did a great job, and Paul Bettany's I think Paul Bettany does a phenomenal job as Vision in everything that he's in, but this was the introduction to Vision. Really enjoyed Vision's character. It's also just everything kind of comes together. And this is huge for moving on to later on. Now, the thing that was really interesting is because some of the Avengers had already gone through the events of Winter Soldier, it actually prepared them to have a breach and be taken over by Ultron. So what I mean by that is in Winter Soldier, you had, that breach, and you didn't know who was good, who was bad. Fury had to go into hiding. He faked his death, all of that. You were worried about double agents, Hydra, etc. That trained some of the Avengers, though, to be ready with another breach from Ultron. Because when Ultron breached into the Avengers headquarters and the tower, the Avengers were ready for it because they had already gone through something similar. So I really like this movie. I understand why people don't, but, you brought Vision and Wanda Maximoff to the big screen. Got to give Joss Whedon credit, and they definitely do in every interview that they're in. Number 4, Thor Ragnarok, 2017. This movie is just phenomenal. I mean, you get a little bit of everything. And look, there's humor. There's this moment in the film where you don't even know what's happening. Hela comes back, the death of Odin. You see brothers working together. You see Hulk. Hulk actually, at the end of Ultron, Hulk just disappears. He flies the Quinjet out of the area and he disappears and he ends up on the junk planet. And that's what ends up happening. He ends up being kind of the main guy there, the head honcho. You see Thor get beat down by Hulk, and the introduction of Valkyrie, played by Tessa Thompson, who's phenomenal. You also get to see Jeff Goldblum. So there's some, interesting character developments there. Heimdall's trying to lead the Asgardians out of Asgard because basically Ragnarok is approaching. And it's just such a cool dynamic where, first off, Thor, he has his hair cut and he loses his eye and he loses his hammer after Hela destroys it. But then he realizes that his hammer, he doesn't just need his hammer. He has the power of Thor in general. He the lightning coursing through his veins. So that dynamic's really cool. On top of that, at the beginning, Thor is talking to a villain about Ragnarok and how he needs to prevent it. So this whole movie, he's thinking he needs to prevent it, but in reality, the only way to kill Hela is he actually has to start Ragnarok. So it's all kind of this misunderstanding, and in the end, it all kind of comes together, ties in very well. Moving on to number 3 here, we have Avengers Endgame 2019. It was the culmination of 22 movies, and Endgame really wrapped everything in a bow, a giant bow. We get the return of Thanos, of course. We get the return of Captain America and Iron Man and Hulk, all of the original Avengers, but including Captain Marvel. And we did get Scott Lang, who was trapped in the quantum realm at the end of AntMan and the Wasp 2. We also got Rocket. Anyone that was dusted, well, they're not on the poster, and they're not credited in the film. But this movie, I was very skeptical about the time travel, and I thought they did a stellar job. And this wasn't a happy-go-lucky ending either. Natasha Romanoff dies. Cap eventually dies, although I'm a little... I'm not convinced that he's as gone as people think. But Tony Stark, he's probably gone. So Tony Stark died, Natasha died, and Cap died. This was finality. This was the end of the Infinity Saga. And I thought this really did a nice job of showcasing the heroes all brought together for the common good. But on top of that, they sacrificed a lot. Tony Stark has a daughter. He has his wife. His life is going well. He's happy. And he sacrifices and loses it all to save the world. There are others like Scott Lang who, didn't have... He had Cassie, but he didn't have anybody else. And then, of course, Clint Barton, who lost everyone. But aside from that, for the most part, there were a lot of sacrifices in this movie. And this movie has one of the best endings you'll ever see. The theater moment when Captain America lifts Mjolnir is just unmatched. So this comes in at 3. I wouldn't hate if it was number 1 or 2, but for me it came in at 3 because number 2 is Spider-Man Far From Home. I know what you're thinking, maybe this is a little too high, but not for me. First off, huge Spider-Man fan, so that does tack into it. But I do want to say that Tom Holland evolves in this movie. And Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio just adds to this movie. But this movie is really different because in a way, it's unlike anything we've seen before. It's similar to Doctor Strange with the visual effects. But Mysterio isn't a villain in a sense he's a supervillain. He doesn't have powers. He's emulating powers. He has brains. He has a team of helpers that basically create a character out of thin air to be the next Iron Man. And he fakes all these Avengers level threats to save the world and trick everyone into thinking he is the new Iron Man. This causes Peter to kind of get discouraged about himself. And eventually he gives away the one present that Iron Man, Tony Stark, left behind for him, the Edith glasses, which creates a whole different thing. On top of that, you finally see the development of the relationship between MJ and Peter Parker. And on top of that, we find out that the Skrulls are still lurking about, which does set up the Secret Invasion project that's coming in the next few years or so. But the way this ends, Peter Parker gets his identity leaked to the entire world. And to make matters worse, there's a doctored video with him saying, "Execute them all," and gunshots in the background, while Quentin Beck, aka Mysterio, is lying and dying on the ground. So that sets up No Way Home, which is the next Spider-Man movie in the installment series. It's going to come out in December, and I think it's going to be an all-timer, to be honest with you. But this movie I thought did so well at pushing forward because Peter Parker is still young, but eventually, now with Tony Stark gone, he has to continue to evolve. And I felt like this was a grown-up superhero movie. Obviously, there is definitely school involved, but it felt more grown-up than Homecoming. Homecoming at times felt a little tacky. Spider-Man Far From Home felt dark, felt mysterious, and felt serious. And I think the watchability on this one is just way up there. I could watch this all day. Love this movie. Comes in at number 2. So you guys know where I'm going with this one. Final movie, number 1 in the MCU, Avengers Infinity War is a masterpiece of beyond masterpieces. First off, I didn't like it in theaters initially, but I say that knowing in my heart that I wasn't ready to lose all of these characters that they were doing such a great job developing. Characters like Bucky Barnes having that redemption as the Winter Soldier, getting the vibranium arm in Wakanda. Characters like Scarlet Witch, Vision, Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, Peter Quill. I wasn't ready to lose those characters. Black Panther, the same year we get the Black Panther movie. And so, unfairly, I took it out on the film. I felt it was not a great film at first. But then later on, I watched it, and then I watched it again and again and again until finally I rewatched the entire series in not chronological order, but in the timeline order. And this year, and I was just blown away. Infinity War is just done so well. It builds up so well. And yes, it does feel like Thanos got all of those stones. He was getting beaten and still always came out on top. But they did a really nice job. To be honest with you, Thanos doesn't have all the stones until really the end. The Avengers do everything they can, and I think there are some scenes that were shot very well. I really love first off, the beginning. It's depressing because you see how happy-go-lucky the Asgardians are, how hopeful they are, during the events of Ragnarok as they left Asgard behind. But you do see the end credits with Thanos' ship lurking, and you know something's not going to go the way that they want it to go. So I do, I like the way things come together in this one. The death of Gamora is very sad, obviously, but it had to happen, of course. Again, there's finality there. Of course, she could come back, and she is alive in the current timeline. But it is something to keep in mind, though. They focus on all of these characters, but I really like how this movie did a great job of capturing different settings and different groups. You had the groups with Iron Man, Spider-Man, Mantis, Drax, and Rocket, and actually no, Rocket wasn't there, but it was Drax, it was Mantis, Peter Quill, Doctor Strange, and then back on Earth in Wakanda, and of course Nebula. And then back on Earth in Wakanda, you have Captain America, you have Natasha Romanoff, you have Hulk, you have Falcon, you have Winter Soldier, you have the whole army, the Wakandan army, T'Challa, Scarlet Witch, Vision, Rhodey. So you have all of those guys. So I just thought it was really cool how they had these teams that just kind of happened. They just formed. I really thought it was cool. And this is after the events of Civil War. The Sokovia Accords are still underway. And keep this in mind. Vision and Wanda are in another country because they're basically trying to stay away from everything. They're trying to be on the down low and then move back after all of the events. So this movie really just puts everything all together. There's tons of action. There's tons of story developing. They really do a great job of making Thanos a force to be reckoned with. And so I just found that this was my favorite movie. After my watch through, I just don't think there's a movie that touches this. And I do actually think that either Spider-Man No Way Home or Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness could actually test Avengers Infinity War. But we will see. That's a big if. We don't know if that will happen. But that's going to do it for me. So there you have it. Avengers Infinity War takes the crown here. Number 1 in my list. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you like the content, be sure to subscribe. We have more MCU content on the way, as well as sports content. We have a live stream on Thursday. And then Friday, I'm going to watch Winter Soldier and get a video out as soon as, or Falcon Winter Soldier. I'm going to get a video out as soon as I can, as, the recap reaction video, kind of like the one I had last week. So, again, thank you guys so much for supporting the channel, and you guys take care.